And then I did a combat deployment to Iraq in 2004. And during that deployment, I suffered an injury during the fight for Fallujah, Operation Phantom Fury. And that ended up ending my career in the military because of the physical limitations. Your days of carrying a rucksack are over with a rifle. And I was just like, I was super crushed. Like it absolutely destroyed me because my goals from there were to progress.
This is Beer 30, a podcast that connects badass people and shares their experiences over a cold one. Kick back, relax, and enjoy the show. And if you like it, don't forget to leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Let's get started with today's episode.
Welcome to another episode of Beer 30, brought to you by UF Pro. I'm your host, Tanner Ditton, and today we have a former Marine scout sniper, expert in all things long range, and founder of Modern Day Sniper, Caylen Wojcik. Caylen, thanks for coming on to the show.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me.
So, just to give a little bit of background to the audience, I could definitely attempt to give you a little information or give the listeners a little information about you and your story, but probably be better to hear it from the man himself. You want to talk about a little bit about what you've done, what you currently do, and what your future holds?
Yeah. So let's see. I've been behind a bolt action rifle since the time I was 14 years old, and I am 46 now. It's been an incredible journey because I grew up reading books. That we didn't have the internet, right? So everything was reading books, and I was consuming Tom Clancy by the time I was like 12, 13 years old, like at a cyclic rate, just going through like Tom Clancy, W.E.B. Griffin, Dale Brown, like all of those authors that were writing about military stuff, right? So super into learning about all of the special operations that have been conducted over the years and how all those organizations evolved through time. Like I read a lot about the long range reconnaissance patrol in the Army. I learned a lot about, the reconnaissance units and the early implementation and use of SEAL teams in the Vietnam War. And then that led me to reading a book called 93 Confirmed Kills, Marine Scout Sniper. That was the book about Carlos Hathcock. And when I read that book, I was like, that's it, man. That's exactly what I'm doing. And I read that book when I was about 15. And then I said, okay, well, I'm going to go be a Marine and I'm going to go down that road. And that's exactly what I did. I joined the Marine Corps when I was 17 years old, and I ended up having to do a stint. Well, my first, your first kind of like training cycle in the infantry, I had not the greatest leadership, and they would not allow me to go take the scout sniper selection.
Oh, wow.
For the sniper platoon and the infantry battalion. They said falsely I had to do a rotation as an infantry Marine first, which was not true. However, in the end, I think it was beneficial because I learned a lot about how the infantry worked, and snipers are a support asset. And so with snipers being a support asset, it's really important for them to understand how the infantry works so that way you can best support their efforts as a support asset, right? So I thought it was, in the end, looking back on it, in hindsight, it was probably a good thing. So once I got into the sniper community, that was pretty much where I stayed for the rest of my career. And I served in a couple of infantry battalions. I did a stint as an instructor at the basics course at Camp Pendleton, California from like 2001 to 2003 timeframe, early 2004 timeframe. And then I did a combat deployment to Iraq in 2004. And during that deployment, I suffered an injury during the fight for Fallujah, Operation Phantom Fury. And that ended up ending my career in the military because of the physical limitations, which is really bizarre because at the time that injury occurred, the doctors really didn't have much experience dealing with like major blast trauma.
Okay.
And so they're trying to figure everything out, and they're just like, look, dude, that's really screwed up. And I'm just going to do my best to make you able to like walk and chase your kids around the backyard and stuff when you're older. Your days of carrying a rucksack are over. with a rifle. And I was just like, I was super crushed. Like it absolutely destroyed me because my goals from there were to progress. And eventually I had an opportunity to work with an ODA, with a Special Forces ODA on my deployment for a week and a half, and watching those dudes work and it was a tremendous honor and a privilege to work with them because I was able to see the other side. I was able to see the other side and how that organization operated from a professional standpoint. And I was just absolutely blown away by their ability to operate autonomously.
Mm-hmm.
Those guys have the ability to generate their own target packages. They have the ability to generate their own information and intelligence, or collect information and then produce intelligence from it. They had the ability to run their own sources, run their own CIs, and then conduct operations based upon that information and intelligence. And I was watching all of this happen in real time, and I was like, dude, I'm in the right line of work, but just in the wrong service.
Yeah.
So my goal was to get out of the Marines. Well, eventually I wanted to go, when I returned from that trip, I wanted to go take the Force Recon selection, get into Force Recon. And really, I just wanted to be a shooter. I just wanted to learn how to be a better individual shooter myself and not be in a leadership role. Because I'd been in leadership roles in the sniper community, and I was just like, okay, I want to focus on just developing my own personal skills, not with leadership involved. And so I was going to go cruise over and hang out at Force for a while, and then eventually apply to take the selection for the unit and go to the Army. And that just ended up obviously not happening. So when I got out, I moved up here to Washington State, and I started to work as a steel fabricator for a family business. I knew nothing about welding or fabrication or anything. And I just learned. Yeah, it was pretty cool, man. Like I learned a lot of really cool stuff. Once you learn those, it's just like shooting, right? Once you understand the foundational principles of marksmanship, you're able to pick up a pistol, a rifle, a bow, and then apply those fundamentals and have some semblance of success. And you might have to drill down specifically on some for, specific disciplines. Like, Tanner, I've watched you shoot a pistol, and you shoot a pistol really fucking well. And you've been able to drill down on that specific aspect of marksmanship with both a pistol and a carbine. And those skills for you are going to transfer over to a precision rifle, or even archery, because I shot archery for a while competitively here in Washington too.
Okay.
And when I got here, I was pretty bummed out. I was super bummed out about the turn of my life event. This was not part of the process. And I was still pretty young. I was 25 years old. And I really didn't understand how to make psychological sense of what was happening to me. And in my brain, I was like, well, I'm just going to push all that away and act like that was not a part of my life. And I was like, oh yeah, you can try that all you want, but it doesn't work.
Yeah.
So I picked up archery because I shot a lot of competitive archery in high school. And there's a local bow shop here, and I started to shoot indoor competitions and then outdoor in the summertime, 3D archery targets. I'm sure that you've seen that, around. Hyper competitive. It's just as competitive as everything else out there in the marksmanship world. It's pretty competitive, and it's a lot of fun. And then my passion grew into Western backcountry hunting, and I started to do that with a bow. And then I got back into rifles, and I got back into rifles about 2007. And when I got back into rifles in 2007, I started to realize, well, hey, if I wanted to grow a training company, I was thinking about building a training company. And I was like, well, if I wanted to grow a training company, I should probably start hunting with a rifle and not with a bow.
Yeah.
And so I went back to the rifle and I started to train. I started to go shoot more competitions. And that was when I started to realize that the civilian aspect of marksmanship and long range shooting was far, far more advanced than the military's.
Yeah.
And I started to ask around up here in the Northwest, because the Northwest has a fantastic pedigree of shooters. There's a lot of really good world-class long-range precision shooters that come out of the Pacific Northwest up here. Not saying that there aren't others across the United States, but there's just a lot of them here in the Northwest.
Yeah.
Here in Washington State, we have an amazing place to shoot long range. There are so many ranges that are established to be able to go shoot long range. It's freaking crazy, right? So I got into that and I realized like, dude, there's a lot of stuff that I don't know. Like these guys are all shooting 260 Remingtons, shooting heavy bullets from 260 Remingtons. I'm like, what's this 260 thing? I've only heard of that from the hunting world. And then it was just a cascade effect of learning and evolution and growth and going to these events and seeing what guys were doing and then going, okay, well, I need to learn that too. I need to learn this too. I need to learn that. And I just started, I grew a small training company, and then that training company morphed into working for Magpul. Okay. And a really interesting story there. A friend of mine who was also a Marine Scout sniper, he owned a big ranch in Wyoming, and he had established a relationship with Chris Costa and Travis Haley when they were in the fledgling stages of building Magpul Dynamics.
Yeah.
And so those guys started shooting together. Shep had them out to their ranch, his ranch in Wyoming. And Shep's like, hey, I want you to be a part of this. And I was like, dude, I can't because I'm now a foreman over here in this fabrication shop and I'm in a leadership role and I can't just cut away and go to Wyoming and shoot rifles for 5 days. Like this, I've got a job now. Well, Shep decided that he wanted to go the contracting route because he wanted to make some money. And then I just so happened to become disenchanted with the fabrication world because I was working for a family business and it didn't really pan out. Right. So it's like, this is not for me. The rifle bug just kept biting me harder and harder and harder.
Yeah.
And I wanted to pursue a path that would get me back into quote unquote action guy stuff. Right. I was kind of getting bored. And my physical abilities, because a lot of dudes would ask me, they'd be like, dude, why'd you get out? Like, look at you. You're climbing mountains. You're jumping out of airplanes. Like, why did you get out of the Marine Corps? And I'm like, listen, man, the prognosis at that time was terrible, number one. And number two, I was in a tremendous amount of pain and I didn't know what the future held. So if I couldn't do my job as a scout sniper in the Marine Corps, there were dudes that we would call them schoolhouse commandos. And they wouldn't do any fleet time. They would just bounce from schoolhouse to schoolhouse to schoolhouse. And they would like sit on this pulpit of professed bullshit because it's all theoretical.
Yeah.
And when a military is engaged in combat, your TTPs are changing at a hyper speed. Every deployment, things are changing. Dudes are coming back and they're like, hey, this is what we experienced. And in a matter of 6 to 9 months, you're seeing changes in TTPs because you're responding to the enemy responding to you. So it's like this cat and mouse game of everybody's adapting to everybody, right? So I said, man, I don't even want to be in that world if I can't contribute as a gunfighter. Like that doesn't make sense to me. So that's why I got out.
Okay.
So I just started, and when Shep went the contracting route and I was like, hey, I was starting to build my business. I said, hey man, do you mind if I reach out to Magpul and rekindle that little flame? And he was like, yeah, man, I don't care. So I reached out and I started to make connections with Travis, and that eventually led to me working for Magpul. I got hired there in 2011, and I developed that precision rifle program over the course of almost 7 years. Wow. And I worked for Magpul for 7 years, and I got a chance to do some really awesome stuff, man. Magpul was, at that point in time, it was a badass company, and everything was like punk rock and guns, and everybody wanted to do rad shit, and we were skydiving, we were climbing, we were hunting, we were doing the backcountry hunter course thing, and we were just doing the thing. And really, Magpul was using the training division not necessarily as a method to establish business development or make a ton of money as a training business or a training company. They were more using it as a marketing asset and saying, okay, let's just, like, these guys are out doing their thing. Let's just send some photographers and capture what it is that they're doing in reality, so you don't have to do these canned photo shoots. Because as you know, as a photographer, videographer, everybody knows that it looks like a canned photo shoot. It's like, It's pretty obvious.
Yeah.
Right. So, yeah. And then basically what ended up happening is Magpul's corporate structure started to change. The business started to grow and evolve. And as that started to happen, I was too young at that point in time, and I had no desire to play that game. We were starting to play it was starting to be like Game of Thrones.
Oh, no.
And I was like, dude, I don't want to have anything to do with this. This is not my jam. I'm going to go do my own thing. And I cut away from Magpul in 2017 and started my own consulting and training business, which then led to Modern Day Sniper in 2020. And that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah.
That's pretty much what I've been doing.
That is awesome. That's really cool. Well, I mean, since you're doing all this long range stuff and like I said at the top of the show, you're an expert in all things long range. Do you do anything other than archery? Do you dabble in any type of other shooting rather than just long range and archery? Or does long range, take up so much of your time that you just can't?
It really does. That's a good question. And, I have a pistol range here at my house.
Oh, okay.
I live out in the country. I have a pistol range with a plate rack and a dueling tree, and I can shoot whenever I want. And I can shoot right outside the shop here. I've got a 100-meter rifle range that I use to do load development and, zero guns and fundamental work and whatnot. But you're absolutely right, man. It's like, it takes it. I don't have the time to dedicate to proficiency outside than just making sure that I'm staying proficient for my everyday carry needs and
absolutely
and all that stuff. But being a proficient handgun and carbine guy, like I used to do a lot more of it because Magpul taught all those classes.
Mm-hmm.
We would bring in contract instructors to do CQB packages for, organizations, law enforcement departments, military organizations and things. And I would be an adjunct instructor or an assistant for that. So I was shooting regularly with pistols and carbines, but once I stepped out on my own and had to really focus my attention on building a training company that was based on precision long range shooting, that was where like all my efforts went.
Yeah. What do you think your least proficient shooting skill is right now, in terms of whether it's long range or it's the pistol, rifle, whatever?
My most efficient skill probably would be like CQB type employment of a carbine.
Yeah.
I'm just real rusty. I'm just real rusty. I haven't done it in a while.
Right. The last time you did it was what? When you were in?
Well, no, like we probably during my Magpul days.
The Magpul days?
In that, 2011 to 2017 in there, we did quite a bit of CQB for different organizations and stuff. But as you know, that stuff falls away really fast. It falls away super fast.
Yeah. Because there's guys that are teaching it now and it's completely different than 10 years ago. The core principles are still there. It's the same thing with shooting and all that stuff, where speed, surprise, and violence of action in CQB, but it's like there are more efficient ways to get other things done and more efficient ways of communicating, stuff like that. And obviously you know all that.
The other thing to remember too is that CQB is the essence of CQB that people understand now is more focused on that hostage rescue mission. It's more focused on that select target mission. It's more focused on that raid. Whereas like in the regular infantry, if I have a building to clear, we ain't doing that. We're throwing frags. We're throwing frags. We're dropping bombs. And if necessary, I'm going to call up a bulldozer and just bulldoze that shit to the ground. Because from a commander's standpoint, a commander's like, why would I risk having a fire team killed and wounded just to get 3 assholes or 4 assholes out of a building? That's stupid. I don't care about collateral damage. I don't care about any of that stuff. I just need those guys dead. Well, let's do that with the least amount of potential for injury or casualties on our side. And we're just going to do this with frags. And we did it a lot in Fallujah where, we were losing guys all the time. And so the battalion commander was just like, nah, let's just bulldoze that thing to the ground and call it good.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what we did.
Yeah. You mentioned you have a pistol range up back. And in some of these competitions that you're doing, do some of them require pistols? I thought I had been to some that do require. Oh, they used to. Okay.
Used to. Yeah.
So do you keep brushed up on the pistol shooting much anymore?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because that's important. That's important to me because I carry a pistol. Like when I'm out, as a backcountry hunter, being in bear country, a pistol is absolutely always on me. Yeah. And those skills need to be at least at a point where you can be effective at protecting yourself. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to go set any any land speed records with shot splits and stuff like that, but I'm proficient enough to have confidence in my own skills that I can protect myself and my family in the event that, we're in the mountains and we have some sort of chance contact with a predator like that, because it's a real thing depending on where you're at. I've been charged by a grizzly bear before, and it's a very unnerving experience, and I learned a lot from that, and I will not be in that position ever again.
Absolutely. Yeah. So when I first met you, it was in Montana. What was the class that we were at?
Scout. It was Scout Arms was putting on their annual PhD hunting clinic.
That's what it was. Yeah. And so I was there filming sort of like three things, but in one of those things that I did film, I was there with, the listeners know, Rick from Achilles Heel Tactical. I was there and he was teaching, he was taking your class as well as teaching a little bit of the pistol portion for bear defense. So did you see any of that teaching go on, or were you taking a break time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. No, so I was observing.
I remember specifically, and this isn't a huge knock at any of the hunters there. They're there to learn, but them seeing what would be required for like a bear drill, what he did, and then putting them in the same reins and them realizing, oh, I need to practice more on pistol, like especially if it comes down to a bear. So yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, if you are a hunter and you're out in the mountains and you have a potential to run into a predator like that, staying brushed up on pistol just for that alone,
really important.
Yeah, it's very important, because a lot of those guys realize they're shooting 10 mil, they're shooting 45. After one round, they can't keep a shot on target. Yeah, and that grizzly bear is not going to come slow.
It's going to happen real fast. You don't understand it until you're actually in that scenario and it's happening to you, and you don't think that an animal that big can move that fast, and they certainly can. And it's terrifying. I mean, it's you're plunging yourself into the unknown, and it's all unfolding in real time right in front of you. Time slows down. Your nervous system goes into a fight or flight response instantaneously. And it was kind of funny because my bear experience, I was on a boat, I was on a raft, and I was in Alaska fishing, and this bear was on a gravel bar, and he was foraging on a gravel bar, and he was probably about 3 years old. Mom probably just kicked him out. And so he's trying to figure it out for himself. He probably doesn't have a whole lot of experience dealing with a raft floating down the river. And he saw the raft and he didn't know what to do. Like, his body language was chill at first, but then all of a sudden he was just like, fuck that thing. I don't like that. And he just turned and started coming across the gravel bar. And it was just like, oh boy, here we go.
No.
And I got nothing, man. I got a 5-weight fly rod in my hand. And it's 3 dudes in a boat, probably sounding like 12-year-old Dutch girls screaming at this bear, trying to get it to do something other than what it's doing now. And it's just, everybody was like, after he decided that he was done, he turned and walked away. And I don't know, it was probably like 20 feet away when he decided that he was like, all right, I'm over it.
Okay.
And we just kept floating down the river, and the guide in the boat was like 23. The other young guy that I was fishing with, he is the grandson of the woman that brought us on the trip. It was his graduation present from high school to go on this trip. And so he had never experienced anything like that before. He's young. And like, the whole boat was silent for like 30 minutes. Nobody said a word. It was just, and then he finally, the kid finally says, he's like, man, I feel like I'm like tingling and shaking all over. And I started laughing. I was like, welcome to adrenaline, buddy.
Yeah.
That's what that is. And I said, it'll go away. You'll take some time. It'll go away. But once that all occurred, like, that was a major, major eye-opening experience when it comes to, you're in that animal's world now. Like, you're in that animal's world and you're adapting to them. And so those skills are absolutely necessary to be proficient. 100%.
Yeah. So when you're hunting, what's your game? I mean, what are you usually hunting?
So my passion for hunting is high country mule deer.
Okay.
Mule deer that are above the tree line. I like hunting those animals during the early part of the season when they're in their summer routine. Our seasons here in Washington State aren't the best in terms of time of year, but we do have a hunt. Right now, it's actually going. I'm not on the hunt right now. I injured my shoulder pretty badly, so I really wouldn't be able to pack anything out. So I'm trying to get it back to where it's healthy. But this time, September 15 to 25 is the Washington State High Country Buck Hunt, and it's your first crack at mountain mule deer with a rifle for the entire season, and so that's huge.
Yeah,
if you're willing to do the work to put yourself in the location where those animals live, you're going to have, and you're persistent and patient, you understand how to put yourself in the environment or the habitat that the animals live in, and you can get there, you're going to have a shot at a nice mountain buck. It's going to be a great time, but you have to be able to pack it out. You get it's a thing. Hunting out here is not like hunting in Arkansas or back east. It's very different. Some people, depending on if you have private land access, you can hunt from a quad or something like that. But most of my stuff is all backcountry backpack stuff.
Okay.
And I'm doing it on my own.
Yeah. Wow. Well, you mentioned that you were jumping out of helicopters or planes or whatever and skydiving. Tell me a little bit about that, because that seems like a little more extreme, at least to me, to hunting.
It's fun. So I always wanted to learn how to skydive. I'll never forget. I was on one of our training deployments, and I think we were in like Doha or something like that. And the Force Recon platoon was doing some jump operations on the base that we were temporarily occupying on our deployment. And I remember walking by and seeing the guys walk out to the bird with their rigs on, and then I see the dudes in the packing house packing parachutes, and I remember just looking. I would look up and go, those dudes have been up there and they jumped out of that helicopter, and I want to know what that feels like. I want to know what that's all about. Right. And so it would be many years later that I would have the opportunity. I was into road racing motorcycles when I was in, when I was in the Marines. And so that was really taking a lot more of my time as a young man. Mm-hmm. And I kind of feel like if I got into skydiving at the same time I got into road racing motorcycles, that things might have been a little different. Both of them are super dangerous, but I was super into riding bikes. So like skydiving was not at the forefront of my mind. I didn't start jumping until like 2016. And I went through like a shitty breakup, and it was just not good. Right. And a buddy of mine had just gone through free fall school, and we were working together at Magpul, and he had developed a pretty good, solid working relationship with the staff at the free fall school. And he said, "Hey man, if you ever want to learn how to jump, just give me a call and we'll set up, we'll do the thing." And some time went by, and I was just like, and then I got to this point in time in my life where I was just like, I need to do something different. I need to do something, I guess, cool. Right. And I called him. I was like, "Hey man, you remember that thing?" I said, I think it's time to do that thing. And he was like, "Roger that." And I had a date. In a week's time, I had a week scheduled in Florida to go learn how to skydive from literally the owner of the company. And it was a tremendous honor. That company was called Complete Parachute Solutions, or is called Complete Parachute Solutions. And so I had the ability to learn from some of the best in the world. And they taught me the quote unquote, the right way.
Right.
And as soon as I jumped, I was like, dude, I am going to do this until I can't do this. This is a lot of fun. And I don't know, some people are just like, why is it fun? It's like, well, man, you're flying you're falling through the sky with your homies, and you're chasing each other around, and you're having fun, high-fiving. And then you're learning, like me, learning the individual skills of learning how to fly a parachute. I'm a pilot. I'm a fixed wing pilot myself. And flying parachutes is a lot of fun. And being able to land your parachute exactly where you want to land it under any environmental condition, that's what those guys taught me. They're like, listen, that is you need to be able to park that thing wherever you need to park it, and you need to park it safely. And so like I learned how to jump combat equipment, like which civilian skydivers don't get a chance to do. And it was because of that relationship that we had established with CPS. And so I was really fortunate in my skydiving journey to learn from some of the best in the world. And I don't take that lightly. those guys, like I built some tremendous friendships just from that community, and they were incredibly welcoming, incredibly open. And I had a lot of crazy, cool opportunities come from that. I got a chance to go to Mount Everest as a result of that. And I got a chance to jump in the Everest Valley during an expedition for setting world records. Like it was an amazing experience with those guys. It was awesome.
Are you still a record holder right now for?
I guess it's unofficial.
Unofficial? So, okay.
It's unofficial. So the way that this all went down was, unbeknownst to me, I was being used as a training guinea pig for basically, they wanted to see, like, so military freefall school is, there's not a whole lot of skydive. Like those guys come out with, I think, 27 jumps. And 27 skydives is not a lot of skydives. Like it's not a lot at all. And so you start stacking up combat equipment, you start stacking up oxygen, you start stacking up night vision, night jumps. Things get complicated very, very fast. And it's a viable method of getting to work. However, the proficiency level that needs to be maintained to do that safely is extraordinary. Those guys have to focus on that really, really hyper focused to make sure that they're proficient at it, because it's dangerous. So I got a chance to be a part of that training program. They wanted to see, like, hey, if I take this guy and he shows aptitude, can I take him from being no jumps, put him through the course, and then put him through it's confined space canopy control, meaning I have this very small area to land in, and I need to be able to loiter over that area with my parachute and precisely put it where I need to put it and land it. And it could be in a very confined space. Perhaps it's up in the mountains where I have to land in a very, very small landing area and there's terrain all around me, right? So I have to be able to learn how to fly my parachute and be in control of it and park it in a really tight spot. And so they put me through all of that training as a really young skydiver. I left for Mount Everest, or the Everest Valley, I should say, with 50 skydives under my belt. And the first drop zone that we went to was the same drop zone that is called Skydive Everest. And it's at an airport down the valley from the mountain called Singboche. And Singboche sits at about 13,000 feet MSL. And that was the drop zone that they let me jump at. And I wasn't planning on jumping on that trip. And I was a part of the trip that I thought, because I had alpine climbing experience. And the final jump of this trip that we were trying to attain was a landing at the south col of, I think it was the west col of Barunse, which is a peak in the Himalayas. And that drop zone was 20,100 feet. And that was basically a snowfield, a glaciated snowfield. And in order for us to access it as a part of the drop zone crew, it was going to take us to ascend a head wall up the valley to get to this col. And that was part of the reason that I was on the trip and part of the drop zone crew. And then they were like, hey, you're going to jump today. You want to jump? And I was like, do you guys think I can? If you guys think that my skills are up to the par to do this, then I will trust you. And they came back and they were like, yeah, well, because of the way that the load schedule works, and we're trying to get the jumpers that are going to go up the valley and jump at higher altitudes, we're trying to get those guys are obviously priority in the stack and in the load plan. So you're not going to jump a 360 square foot parachute that you've been trained on and know the sight picture for. You're going to jump one of the civilian rigs that are about 150 square foot smaller. And I was like, do you think that's okay? Like, if you guys think that's okay, I'll trust your judgment. And they're like, yeah, man, you're good. Like, we did the density altitude calculations and all the things, and you're good. They're like, this is it though, bro. Like, this is it. You ain't coming back. So you better, if you want it, you better take it. And so I was like, yeah, well, I'm going to take it. That's the way I am. So I saddled up, got in the helicopter, and I was terrified, and watching all of that terrain around you and seeing the Himalayas in front of you, and the helicopter's flying very close to the mountains to gain lift to get up to altitude, because those helicopters are operating right at the edge of performance. We were flying a B-3 A-Star, and no doors. The only seat that's in the aircraft is the pilot's. They're only putting enough fuel in the bird to get it up to altitude and release jumpers and then come back down to the drop zone and reload again. So it's a real, it's a delicate situation.
Yeah.
And I want to say we were exiting the helicopter at about 27,000 feet MSL, something like that. So, full O2, no exposed skin, that sort of thing. It's super, super cold. And the upper winds were blowing like 90 to 100 knots. It's the real deal. It was crazy, because when we got to altitude, my buddy Cody exited the helicopter first, and then I'm looking for the drop zone, and I see the drop zone way over there, way over there. I've never had an offset that big, and I was just like, well, clearly it's for real, because he just left the helicopter, so everything must be cool from a jump master perspective. So I'm like, all right, man. Camera guy looks at me, gives me the thumbs up, and I was like, oh shit, here we go. Step out onto the skid, exit the bird, and off we went. And it was a hell of an experience, man. It was pretty crazy. Wow. So
when
I
you're
did 2 skydives there, and that was it.
You did?
Yeah.
Wow. Mm-hmm. That is, when you're talking about landing in a very precise spot, mm-hmm. What's your, I don't know, I mean, how big is that spot that you want to be precise at? Because not being a jumper, I'm like, mm-hmm. Is that spot within 10 feet? I mean, what
good question. Yep. So those guys were holding us to a pretty tight standard. They would basically go out there for training, and before you got on the bird, they would say, hey, you're going to look for a yellow Frisbee. All right. So they just walk out in the drop zone, pitch a yellow Frisbee out there, and say, that's the mark. That's where that's what we want you to hit. And then they would park a quad or a truck, and they said, I don't want you to go any farther downwind, or I'm sorry, I don't want you to go any farther upwind than this quad. And I mean, dude, it would be like maybe 50 meters upwind of the landing spot, which is super tight. To a normal pattern that you train like a skydiver on is a significantly larger landing pattern. And so it's just basically, you're loitering your parachute in a holding area over that area. And once you've reached an altitude that is low enough to commit to the landing, that's when you commit to your pattern. And it's usually in that instance, probably about 250 feet. Whereas in a normal skydiving pattern, you're going to start that pattern at about 1,000 feet.
I see.
Off the ground. Yeah. So everything is happening really, really quickly, and you have to pay very close attention to how much wind that you're dealing with, because the landing area is behind you. And so while you're in your holding pattern, you're constantly looking over your shoulder to make sure that I'm not getting pushed too far downwind so that I can't get back to the drop zone.
Okay.
Because if you get too far downwind, you can't get back. And so it's this carefully orchestrated or choreographed series of movements and events that allow you to put your parachute in the right position to make that happen. And so for like in the skydiving world, to have a demonstration rating to be able to like land in like a stadium or something like that, you have what's called a pro rating. And like I can't just go be like, yeah, man, I'm going to go fly an American flag into like Yankee Stadium tomorrow. It's like, no, it doesn't work. It's totally illegal, because you could die. Like you could fly into the stadium. It's a very complicated scenario. So the pro rating is, I might get this wrong, and if I do, you guys as are skydivers, don't murder me. But in order to have your pro rating, you have to land consecutively 25 times, and it has to be observed. You have to land 25 times in a 25 foot box.
Oh, wow.
Every time.
Okay.
No matter what. And it has to be consecutive, right? So if like jump number 23, you screw up and you overpenetrate and you come out of that box, you're starting back at 1.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So it's pretty, and it's for good reason, right? Like it's for good reason, because I mean, I'm sure, have you seen the video of, there was some South American dudes that were jumping into a stadium? Like, I'll have to send it to you sometime. It's absolutely insane.
I
That's
believe
why
I know
they do
what you're
that.
talking about. Yeah.
That's why they do
going
that. So
all
shit like
over
that
the
doesn't-
stadium and
They're
stuff
going
like-
all over the place,
Yeah.
landing in the crowd and landing in
Yes.
a roof and hitting telephone poles and shit. It's like, yeah, we don't want to do that.
Yeah,
So-
that's rough.
Yeah, so
Jeez.
jumping's been a lot of fun for me, and it's been a great kind of balance to the shooting world.
Okay.
The skydiving world is really, there's some really good. I've met some of the best friends that I have now from the skydiving community, so it's pretty cool.
That's awesome. Well, back to the mountains. I told you before we started, I'm a mountain lover myself. I just moved to Arkansas, which has much more nature and mountains around me. It's great. But what are some things that you're doing in the mountains other than hunting? Are you a camping guy at all? Do you do any sort of survival stuff or just off-grid stuff?
I'm not really. My son is really into bushcraft, and so we cultivate that. I love cooking outside. I love cooking in Dutch ovens. I love cooking over open fire. I don't necessarily have to be in the mountains to go hunting. Like I can be in the mountains and be completely content.
Yeah.
Just hanging out at camp, right? I don't have to be. I guess maybe as I've gotten older, that those things are more important to me than conquering a peak or harvesting an animal. Like those things are wonderful byproducts of the experience. It's not. I don't have to have that in order to feel like I'm getting something out of the experience. And one of the things that's been really important to me as of late is rites of passage for young men. I've been fortunate enough. I did a little bit of help guiding hunts for a while with a good friend of mine, and I wanted to learn more about hunting. I wanted to be a better mountain hunter. And so sometimes I would forego my own hunting experience and keep a tag in my pocket just to go help out on hunts so that I could get the experience. And through that, I've been really fortunate to take a couple of young men on trips that they had never been exposed to before. They had never been exposed to that kind of hardship, that kind of work. And both of them came away from those individual experiences profoundly impacted by them. They're like, both of them are like, they're like, I've never done anything like that in my life. I've never done anything that hard before. I've never had to dig that deep within myself to say, take another step. You have to take another step, and the way that the world's going and the way that society is going today, I don't think that we don't put enough emphasis on a rite of passage for young men that are trying to learn how to be men, because there's something to that. There is something to that that's in your DNA as a man, that you need hardship, you need adventure, you need struggle, you need strife, you need to persevere through things. And in today's day and age, that's just not. The youth of today do not have those experiences. And if they do, it's because they're born into a family that goes and does those things.
Yeah.
Right. They're born into a family that maybe you're fortunate enough to be born into a family that's, cowboying, backpack hunting, things like that, where it's just where you're exposed to that from a young age and you grow up in it. But if you don't, and you go into those scenarios, it's completely foreign.
Yeah.
We used to teach a backcountry hunter course, and we'd spend 2 days on the rifle range working on marksmanship skills. And then we would take the students into the mountains for 3 days and do what we could to simulate a backcountry mountain hunt. Teach them how to pack their packs, teach them what to take them how to fit their packs, teach them how to hike, take them up into the mountains and say, okay, this is where you can look to find animals. This is the habitat that you want to look at. And these are some glassing techniques. This is how you select a campsite. These are some things to look for that you don't want to do. I mean, geez, we just had 2 young men that were killed by a lightning strike in Colorado. Think building awareness around the fact that this environment will fucking kill you.
Yeah.
Like, this environment will kill you. And we are a very fragile species. And you have to have the wherewithal and the knowledge and the skills to keep yourself safe in these conditions. And that's just not, there's very few organizations out there that are teaching that. And so now I'm always my passion for rifles will always be there. But I think as I grow and have more life experience, that's important. And potentially in the future, that's the direction that modern day sniper is going to go.
Wow.
In terms of helping young men find their way, and potentially just using the way of the rifle to do that as a segue.
Mm-hmm. Wow. I mean, speaking of the way of the rifle, you compete in PRS, is that correct?
Yep.
Is that the only? I wasn't sure if there were like multiple different sort of like there's USPSA, PCSL.
Yeah. So I'm not really a super avid competitor in PRS. My schedule's pretty stacked, and we're going to change that in next year. We're going to do things a little bit differently with how we structure classes and stuff, and our offerings from Modern Day Sniper. I do want to dedicate more specific time to those events. PRS right now, the competition is incredibly fierce. Mm-hmm. It is, over the course of time that I've seen, like the PRS became a thing in 2012. And I think I shot my first rifle match in 2001 or like 1999 or something like that. And watching that sport grow and evolve to what it is today it's pretty insane.
Yeah.
There's the quality of shooter out there is phenomenal. What we have available to us today that's out in the ranks of the riflemen of the world, and not only just the United States, but of the world itself. I used to be able to, like, this is just me. I used to be able to be completely vulnerable and honest with you here. I used to be able to show up to a rifle match and rely on the skills that I had to do well, if not win the event. And it's not that way anymore. You can't do that. The competition is too fierce. Like, there's dudes out there that are going to a 2-day match with 200 shots, 220 shots fired, and they're missing a total of 6 to 8 shots out of that 220 fired. The leaderboards, you start looking at like the stackings of the rankings. You could have, like, the last local club match I shot, there was a 3-way tie for first place. And so, like, at a PRS match, you could have a stacking, like the first 10 dudes are only separated by like 3 points, 3 hits. So something's going to have to change eventually with scoring. Something's going to have to change with the way that that's done, because in the PRS, like, it's really difficult to do, like in USPSA, you have A, B, and C zones, right? So you can score based on that and time. Whereas in PRS, it's like one piece of steel. And so it's like a hit or a miss. And then you can utilize time as a tiebreaker. And that's what it's used for now, as a tiebreaker.
Okay.
But now we're having 1 to 2, maybe even 3 tiebreaker stages per match because the competition's getting so stacked.
Jeez.
Right. So something's going to have to eventually give with scoring. I don't know what the answer to it is. I'm not super focused on PRS. I use it as something of a tool to validate my own training skills.
Absolutely.
To see where I stack up. But it's not something that I have like a tremendous focus on at this point in time in my career.
Yeah, I'm sort of the same way with USPSA. I will go and shoot a match just to test my skills, see where I am. I mean, the last match I shot, I was with, I think, 2 master class and then a bunch of A class. And I'm not classified just because I am there just to shoot. And it's very humbling to see where guys are that really focus on it. And you're like, okay, like where would I stack up between like a master class or something like that? And you're like, wow,
yep,
there's a big difference.
So great example. Like a weekend ago, I shot a PRS match down in Oregon, and both days we shot 9 stages a day. I shot 7 stages either clean or down 1 point. But then if you have 3, like I had 3 stages where I didn't do really well, you're done. Like, you're completely toast. It's over with. And that's like, you end up mid-pack in a field of about 130 shooters.
Yeah. So
the competition is really fierce, and it's a great learning experience to just keep pushing and keep training. And it's humbling. It really is. And so I got a chance to sit down and talk with one of the upper echelon PRS competitors. His name's Cal Harmon. He's on the Army Marksmanship Unit. And the conversation was super insightful from a competitive mindset perspective, because those guys are held to an insane standard at the AMU, like an insane standard. So 97%, if they're not shooting at 97% or better than the leader of the match, they're going to get a talking to.
Wow.
And there's a potential that they could be removed from the team if they're not operating at that level. And so There's a tremendous amount of stress. And when you're competing against an individual that has that level of stress, if you're not dedicating the same amount or better time of practice, you just don't have a chance. Like you're not going to be there. And so that's the level of competition that PRS is at right now. So the other cool one out there is the NRL Hunter Series. And that's something that I'm going to spend more focus on in 2026. I've got some products that are coming out that are going to, like soft good products that are coming out that are specifically focused on load-bearing equipment for hunters and snipers.
Okay.
And so I'm going to use those events because those events are all blind stages. You don't get a chance to see the target array. You show up, you're behind some sort of defilade or something that obscures your vision of the targets, and the range officer calls you up when it's your time to shoot, and they're like, "Hey, you ready to go, Caylen?" "Yep, I'm coming up. Here's your aiming stake. Here's your left and right lateral limit stakes. All the targets can be seen from here. Any questions?" Well, you're looking for either 4 targets, 2 targets, or 1 target.
Okay.
If it's a 4-target stage, you're going to shoot all 4 of those targets from 1 position. I think if it's a 2-target stage, you're going to shoot them from 2 positions. If it's a 1-target stage, you'll shoot them from 4 positions.
Got it.
So it's one of those 3 formats. And then it's just like, "Hey, man, got any questions?" "Nope. Time starts now." And you got 4 minutes to get all that work done. And that's a badass way of testing a rifleman's skills. You have to be able to find it, you got to range it, and you got to shoot it. Right. And so that's the pinnacle, I guess, if you would. PRS is a real pure test of marksmanship ability and your ability to read wind and have a tuned rifle. Because if your rifle is not up to par, like if your gear is not where it needs to be, you're pissing points away like immediately.
Okay.
The difference between shooting a rifle, like I use this adage all the time, like for military guys, to shoot, like I can put a 1 MOA target out on my range at 1,000, put a 10-inch plate up at 1,000. And with a tuned rifle, with a load that's tuned for that gun, you can wear that plate out. You can hit it over and over and over again. Then you change up your ammunition. You start shooting some ammunition that's like factory or, military ammo. And you try to do that same thing on that plate, your consistency will immediately go to trash. You'll hit it maybe 5 out of 10 times because we have the physical limitations of the consistency of the ammo.
Yeah.
Right. So if I've got ammo with a 50 foot per second extreme spread at that distance, I'm going to have both vertical stringing as well as horizontal stringing. It won't be as much, but the bullet's going to be affected by both gravity and drag and wind differently every shot you take. So your consistency becomes destroyed, and your cone, basically your cone of dispersion is magnified even outside the capability of the weapon. Yeah. So if your gun's not, that's what PRS is testing. Your PRS is testing your ability to bring a tuned gun and have excellent ammunition, be able to read wind, and apply fundamentals under a compressed time limit. And then like the NRL Hunter and the Find It, Range It, Shoot It kind of sniper / matches, they're focusing more on process, gear management, and your ability to execute those basic tasks of finding it, establishing a range, and then making a wind call and shooting it.
I see. Yeah. So NRL Hunter sounds, just from you telling me exactly how it goes, that would definitely be the one where I would be like, yeah, I want to do that one as opposed to the PRS.
It's a lot of fun.
So I guess I've technically sort of introduced myself to it, as well as some of my buddies. We would go out and do some camping for like 3 days and shooting, long range shooting out to 700 with 5.56 stuff. Mm-hmm. And we would set up random targets and we would go to a random spot on this 52 acre place or whatever and say there's 3 targets. You can shoot from here or wherever. Time starts now. And so we would do that and just see who can get the best time or whatever. And we would just say range it if you have a rangefinder, all that stuff. So that definitely sounds like something that would be awesome. But
it's fun.
With that, so with competition, we've talked about it with pistol whenever we had Paul on here, as well as Rick. Do you think that competition is something that, whether it be hunter or someone in military or law enforcement, should be doing in order to test or improve their skills?
1,000%.
Yeah.
And I know that's always been the argument, right? And I remember being a young guy too, like a young guy and being like, that shit, quote unquote, that'll get you killed. It's like, no, like that's ridiculous. The point that people need to understand when it comes to competitive shooting and balancing, marksmanship is marksmanship, right? Marksmanship is what it is. And so you're going to utilize marksmanship for the solution for this particular problem, but that's only a fraction of your skills that you need. So like with snipers, people think that snipers, all they do is shoot. That's quite opposite. Sniper, that's about 10% of your job. If I could put a percentage to it, it's about 10% of your job.
Okay.
But when you need to shoot, it becomes 100% of your purpose. It's just like CQB, right? We have to get to the X, right? We have to get to the target. And so there's a whole host of skills that you need to be proficient at just getting to the target in an organized fashion on time, right? I have to be at this place at this time with all of my boys. So there's skills that go along with that allow you to do that, right? So, and then I have to be able to position myself in the house. I have to be able to move into those rooms and utilize all of the tactics of close quarters battle just so that I can put myself into an opportunity to take a shot. And then marksmanship comes into play. So a precision rifle is the exact same thing for snipers. And so most guys don't understand that a sniper is going to spend 90% of their time doing something other than shooting. And so going into the competition mindset, it's basically problem solving, right? So you're going there and you're looking at what the match director set up and you're saying, okay, this is the problem that's in front of me and I've got to solve that problem. And now some competitors try to game it. And that's probably where my deficiency lies when it comes to competition. Like my brain is not wired to game things. My brain is wired to be like, okay, this is the array. This is it. Go shoot those targets, right?
Yep.
Execute, right? So I'm not in there going, well, if I shoot this target first from this position, that'll set me up better for this position over here. That's just not the way my brain works, right? So is that a detriment? I don't know, maybe. But that's where competition really shines is saying, okay, this is the problem that you have to solve. And we're already assuming that you've gotten yourself to the position where you have to shoot your rifle. So now you're just going to solve the problem in front of you using the skills that you have. And that's where competition really is applicable. And I definitely think that it's something. We just had some dudes I missed the match this weekend. I had some other shit to do. I was recording some film. We had some wind come up and I was like, instead of going to the match, I need to go out and shoot in the wind to film some stuff for this masterclass I'm doing. But I had some guys from law enforcement, like some SWAT snipers come up and shoot a PRS match with their 308s. That's not easy. That's not easy to do at all, especially when you're shooting 2 MOA targets with winds that are, blowing 15 to 20 miles an hour. For a dude shooting a 308, you're going to work your ass off and you're probably not going to hit very many targets.
Yeah.
So that's just more fuel for the fire for you to come back and be like, okay, well, let's evaluate that performance. Let's break it down and say, where was my hit percentage the highest, at what distances and positions? And that's up to you as the individual to say, this is my responsibility in becoming the most proficient sniper that I can possibly be with these opportunities to train in front of me.
Yeah. Whenever you actually are, I guess, putting your skills to the test and you have law enforcement or military out there, do you see a little bit of, I don't want to say hiding, but they're sort of like not wanting to show up or do anything because, they are police or military and they don't want to
1,000%
be shown up.
Case in point, man, I had a class. I won't mention the location. I'll just for not trying to drop dimes or manhole covers on anyone. Right. So, but I am in a general sense. Okay. So get ready. 3 individuals showed up to class, built dudes, like clearly it's like, I know I've been around you guys my entire life, right? I know exactly who you are. I can pick you out of a crowd. And they were 3 dudes by themselves, right? They occupied the far left side of the firing line. In the introductions, they were like, well, my name is so-and-so, and I've been shooting for a little while. And that's it, right? And you're just like, yeah, I bet you have. So that type of thing, right? So we get we get the rifle setup stuff done, and we're breaking out ammo, and we're getting ready to get gun zeroed. And my buddy Juan, he's my AI, he comes over and he's like, hey man, I think those guys are cops. And I was like, I know they're cops. And I go, why do you think they're cops? And he goes, go walk over there. So I walk over there and they have tap ammo. They're pulling tap ammo out of their bag. They got it all, they're just like, I'm like, hey, 3 of you guys, come here. So I pull them aside, I talk to them behind the Connex box, right? And I'm not trying to bust them out in public, but I'm just like, you guys are all cops, aren't you? And they're like, yeah, I'm a cop. And I'm like, let me guess, you guys are SWAT snipers too. And they're like little kids, looking at the ground, kicking rocks and shit, And I'm like, why are you guys, I go, let me ask you, why are you guys hiding this? Like, you should be fucking proud that that is what you do. You should be excited to come to this event to learn, because that's what you're doing. And you should, if you're worried about the perception of others, you got a fuckload of internal work to do, boys. Like, you really got a lot of work to do. Because if that's where your thought process is and your brain is going, man, I can't get beat by these civilians, guess what? You're going to. Because they've got more experience than you in this world, because they're not afraid of showing up. They're going to come out and they're going to be like, yo, dude, I'm just here to learn and I want to get better. I don't have this title that's hanging over the top of me. And I was guilty of it too as a young sniper, man. Man, my first match that I went to as a kid, I was like, I'm a Marine Scout sniper. I'm the best in the world. Then I get my ass slaughtered by a fucking gardener. And I'm just like, what? Well, that's not cool, and you're just like, well, what do I got? Well, the only thing I got is I got to train. I have to accept the fact that clearly the performance shows that I don't know what I don't know. And that guy knows more than me. So what's my only option at that point? Well, I mean, I do have some options. My options is to hide in the shadows and, play the psychological game inside my head and self-deprecate and say, I'm not good enough and all this other things. Or I can lean into that and say, well, that's what's attainable. That's what's achievable. So that guy figured out how to do it. So it's totally possible. Now I got to lean into that and say, that's the goal. So, but not everybody's like that, right? Not everybody's like that. They're not all going to do that. And so I didn't want to like chastise them, but I'm just like, listen, dude, I'm talking to you guys from a position of experience and leadership, from a point of I've been there myself as a young man too. If you guys come into this environment looking at it from this perspective, you've got a giant brick wall in front of you when it comes to learning. You got to knock that wall down, and that wall is killing off your ego. You got to kill off your ego. And I know it's hard, and I know you guys don't understand really what that means right now, because you can't leave it's like the whole adage, you guys need to leave your ego at the door. The instructor coming out would be like, it's like, dude, number one, you don't understand what the fuck that means, because you can't leave your ego anywhere. It goes around, it follows you like your shadow. Everywhere you go, it goes with you. It's you being in touch with what your ego is and how it drives everything that you do as a human being. That's what you got to get in touch with. That's what you got to figure out, because that's what's putting that brick wall up in front of you. Every time you see something and you go, potentially, and we all do it, right? It's like, like traffic is an example. You're in traffic. You want to see somebody's ability to manage stress? Just observe them while they drive in shitty traffic. If they're out MFing everybody and pointing fingers and, fuck that guy. You got some work to do, dude. Like, why does that bother you so much? Why does that dude, like, I don't know, maybe that guy's in his own little world over there, and he's dealing with the craziest heavy problem of his life, and he's just trying to fucking get to work, So cut him some slack, man. You've been there too. But unless we bring that into our awareness, we don't act that way as human beings. It's like we're in our own little world, and we think that everything that's going on in our world is the center of the universe. And that's where your ego can screw you. But you can't just leave it anywhere. It's not like you can be like, stay there, little buddy. You stay right there, and you just don't come out until I'm done with this. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah. Well, get a little bit back on track here with UF Pro. We talked about the idea of doing a long range pros guide with UF Pro eventually. What does it look like to you, and how would you sort of want it to come across for the people watching?
Sure. I am a simplistic long range shooting instructor. And what I mean by that is over the years, I've gone through the phases of interest and drive. So in the very beginning, you get exposed to ballistics and you learn and you're just like, how are we ever hitting targets without knowing all of this stuff? Right. But then I got to a point where I realized, like, do you, like, Tanner, if you and I were shooting together and you came through a rifle class, do you think that you need to be at a knowledge of ballistics that a ballistician would have in order to hit targets consistently and repeatably?
I would think not. No,
you don't. Do you need to know where a ballistic coefficient comes from and the mathematics that are involved in calculating it?
I would think not, but no, I don't know.
You don't. So you need to know some core things. And so over the years, I've looked at this from the perspective of, what do I want my students to know versus what do they need to know in order for them to be successful, right? And so that can be a very wide spectrum, right? So, like, I'm a ballistics nerd. I like ballistics. I think it's super cool to be able to say this little 110 grain projectile, I can launch that into space at speeds equivalent of Mach Jesus and predict exactly where it's going to be in time and space to within a fraction of an inch, right? That's pretty cool. And there's a lot of mathematics that go into being able to do that. But you don't need to know those mathematics. You just need to know what are the key points that the computer program needs to get that answer. That's what you need to know how to do. And you need to know what's important. So, like we talk about, like, spin drift and Coriolis force. Do those things exist? Aerodynamic jump, spin drift, Coriolis force. Do those things exist? Yes, they exist. Are you missing targets because you're not accounting for them? No, you're not. You're not. But a lot of instructors, they hang on that and they're like, you got to, like, we're going to spend an hour talking about spin drift. And you're just like, dude, why? Why are you, like, get them on the range and get them shooting? Because they don't know how to read wind well enough to make spin drift matter. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
If I only have 0.2 of a mil of spin drift at 800 yards, well, what is a mile an hour worth of wind worth at 800 yards? What's more important, reading wind speed or making sure that I have 0.2 of a mil worth of spin drift dialed into the equation? Not unless I'm shooting a clay pigeon or a 1 MOA target. So what we do is we teach people what is important. We teach them the basics, and then we say, okay, these are the factors that exist that are real. However, we run the numbers and we're just like, can you shoot that well? Can you shoot well enough to account for that in the noise of the entire system? Where's the signal to noise ratio? Well, that's still in the there's no signal in that. There's still noise because you're not at that level yet. And when you do reach that level, then you can say, okay, yeah, for that target size, that range, I do need to account for those things in order for me to hit exactly where I want to. So I would say from that perspective, we'd be focusing on exactly what a shooter needs to know to be successful. And it's a building block, right? It's like, I'm not going to spend 3 or 4 hours teaching you how to use a Kestrel. As a matter of fact, I'm going to take about 10 minutes, maybe even less, 5 minutes, and say, these are the things in a Kestrel that you need to know in order for you to put it into this thing to make it tell you what you need to hit the target. If you want to learn that stuff later on in the future, then go for it. Here's the resources to do it. I don't use any of that stuff. I use technology for what it's for, and I'm not afraid of using technology, but I've also been in the scenarios where I've utilized a precision rifle in combat and I understand how the body reacts and how the brain reacts to that stressful scenario. And all of these whiz-bang formulas and speed drop this and all it's all going to fall apart. It's all going to go away. You're going to be centered in the focus and the center of that reticle. You're going to see a humanoid target and you're going to say, I need to get a bullet in that thing to make that behavior stop. and you're going to do whatever is necessary to make that happen. And so a lot of times, like we just did a podcast with a buddy of mine, Owen Mulder. He's a sniper from the GWAT as well. And we talked about, is anybody reporting how many times they missed a target before they actually hit it? Or is it this bullshit of one shot, one kill? I hit every shot I took. Bullshit you did. You saw a dude run across the street and you're like, I think that's about Kohow. And you shoot and your bullet lands 5 mils behind him. And you're like, well, I guess that lead didn't work. Let's try again for the next one. That's the way that works. That's reality. So that's the way that I'm going to train. I'm not going to train for that nitty gritty stuff. We're going to get you to hit targets, and we're going to get you to do it with consistency and repeatability. And we're going to make sure that you have a good, solid connection to your rifle and that you understand how that rifle works. And you understand that your connection to that rifle and the consistency of the connection to the rifle is what is going to give you success at distance. Most of those upper echelon competitors, you know where they're spending their practice time?
On the
paper
range.
at 100. Paper at 100.
Oh, yeah.
They're going to put a 1 MOA dot on that paper at 100, and they're going to shoot the exact same stage that they would under the same time limits. And if all 10 of those shots don't go into that 1 MOA circle, they're going to do it again.
Wow.
They're going to do it again. Because if I have to shoot a 1 MOA target and I'm out on steel, well, and I don't know if my fundamentals are on par, I could break what I believe to be a clean shot on a 1 MOA piece of steel at 400, and I can miss low. And in my mind, I'm like, that's a ballistic error, right? That's an error in my prediction. No, it's actually, if you did that same shot over again on paper at 100, where ballistics don't matter, you're going to break it. You break the shot and it's going to hit at 6 o'clock outside the black. And now we have the ability to go and be like, what did I do to cause that shot to break 0.2 of a mil low?
Yeah.
Okay, well, we got to do that again. Maybe it's that position. Maybe it's the way that I mounted the rifle. Maybe it's the way that I lost concentration in my sight picture at the instant I needed to press the trigger. So all of those fundamentals need to be ironed out first before we go out and do the long range thing. And once the long range thing happens, then we can be like, I know I broke that shot clean. That is definitely a wind issue, or that is definitely an elevation issue, right? So we can start isolating these factors by focusing solely on fundamentals at these close ranges, where we can say that's what the capability of my weapon system is with me attached to it.
Wow. It's funny how, I mean, the principles and applying the fundamentals really shows itself in all aspects of shooting. I mean, it's the same thing with pistol. It's like, you know what the top dogs are doing? They're shooting doubles. They're just 1-2, 1-2, making sure every single time that their fundamentals are correct. And I mean, we had Paul Cost on here, and he was talking about, I mean, that's all he does is doubles. He will shoot 40,000 rounds a year only in doubles alone. And that's all it is. So it's, I mean, and that's the most basic thing, but it's like that will allow you to see that you're applying the fundamentals correctly, so that whenever you go to a problem and you execute, you can't be like, oh, that was the round or something like that. You know exactly if, was that me? Did I have a shit grip? Did I pull on the trigger? I mean, whatever it may be. So that's super, super cool to even hear. I mean, especially in the long range world, that's the same thing. Guys are sitting at 100 and doing it over and over and over again.
It ain't sexy. It is not sexy, but what pays off is the sexy when you're crushing it, right? And the reason that you're crushing it is because you did the work.
Absolutely.
That's important.
Well, Caylen, thank you again for coming on to the show. It's awesome that we're able to do this. I'm looking forward to seeing where this pros guide, hopefully we're able to do it, where it goes. And for the listeners, thank you guys so much for tuning into this episode of Beer 30. Keep an eye out for the next one wherever you listen.
Yeah, man. Thank you very much for the invite, and I appreciate the time.
Absolutely.
So there you have it. This concludes another episode of UF Pro's Beer 30 podcast. Want more information about UF Pro and tactical clothing for professional end users? Then please visit ufpro.com or follow our channels on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok.